Welcome to the Multidose Podcast, your guide to authenticity, hosted by Multazim Zia. Brought to you by the Multipath. This podcast is more than just insights, it's your dose of authenticity. Join us as experts, celebrities, influencers, and real people share their authentic knowledge like never before. From every episode, you can expect to learn something new and maybe explore a new perspective on your own life. To support our podcast, consider donating to our Patreon and share the love on social media. Every like, follow, comment, share, and penny counts. Find us on all streaming platforms and connect with us on our social media at The Multipath and at Multazim Zia. Your authenticity is just one dose away.
Dain, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. I am super excited that we have you on. It has been, for the audience, has been 8 months in the making, this one. So Dain is a super hard person to get on. Just quickly introduce yourself, what you're about, what you do.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here. And yeah, apologies, but just been extremely busy. So I'm essentially a brand strategist, previous designer, and I run a branding agency called Rival. We also have a podcast, and I do a lot of education, live events, and keynotes as well. Yeah.
And the first question straight off the bat is, you said you were previously in design, weren't you? And then you changed to becoming like an entrepreneur, branding expert. What made you do that change?
Yeah, so I've weirdly enough kind of been in and out of design since I was a kid. I think when I was 9, my dad got me like a Windows 95 PC, and I would mess around with Paint as a kid, like stick figure animations and stuff. And then
Mhm.
when I was 13, I joined like an online gaming community called Warrior Nation, and I helped design all of the visual elements and assets for their gaming clan. So it's like my first brand, if you will, like designing their logo and their banners and signatures and things that would promote different games that they were doing. And I used to write blogs on there, doing game reviews. Then after that, I kind of tinkered with Photoshop like throughout the years of high school for like my assignments and stuff. And then when I was 19, I was working in a screen printing store selling t-shirts, and I would design like band merch and company logos, and people would just come in and expect me to design a logo on the spot and then print them 100 shirts and do artwork for them. So I learned how to design super quickly, and I certainly wouldn't call myself like the best designer. The people I have on the crew now put me to shame. But yeah, I really was always fascinated with like consumerism and psychology and retail and e-commerce, and the whole realm of what can create mechanisms to get people to buy things,
Mhm.
whether it was in retail or whether it was like online or creating content to drive traffic. So I was always kind of in the orbit of like naturally wanting to create brands, just didn't quite understand what branding was, until recent years, where I was a content creator for hire essentially, and people would pay me to manage their social feeds and create content for them. And at one point, I think it was in 2019, 2020, I had like 46 clients that I managed socials for. So I figured out how the algorithms work and how to make content for like every different industry. Studied it relentlessly, and then yeah, created like a content creation agency essentially. But it got to the point where I had 3 people on my team, and you know when I was reading all the books and doing the courses and studying everything I could possibly get my hands on to help me run my agency, I realized that the problem wasn't the content, it was the branding of the people I was working with. So whether it was their company or them, I was like, you guys need to deploy better color psychology and change your fonts and address your logo issues and update your website and change your messaging. So I ended up evolving what was then called Victory Front Media into a company now called Rival. And we started kind of like with a hybrid model. So people would come to us for content, Then we would sell them branding packages in unison with their content packages. And then we realized that, you know, brand creation is like its own thing in and of itself and requires a lot of attention to detail, a lot of strategy, a lot of creative thinking. So yeah, I started going off the tools and training my team how to do everything I was doing. And, you know, in the midst of me growing up in and out of design, I was in and out of different retail jobs and sales jobs. So yeah, I got a pretty good, I guess, sales and negotiation acumen, paired with the knowledge of social media and graphic design and
Yeah.
messaging and how to really get people to think and how to have them feel that they're connected with a product, not just buying it to solve a problem. So yeah, what I'm really fascinated with is how to engineer a brand so that someone can build something meaningful that customers engage with more than just to purchase and move on. How do we get people to purchase again and come back a second time, a third time? And yeah, now we've got 30 people almost that work here, and we build brands, you know, all around the world. We've worked with like Culture Kings, Nutrition Warehouse, things like that. But yeah, we've done hundreds of projects, everything from like small startups to rappers and musicians, through to public speakers and authors and, you know, companies in every industry. But that's pretty much where I am now, man. What I do most of my time. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say it's amazing because you always see, especially on social media, people's, I think the glorified life that they have after they've achieved something. It's quite nice to see that, and it's quite nice to hear that you started off, particularly where majority of designers and most entrepreneurs will start off right at the basics, and then you built your way up.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people just think you've jumped to the top, and that's it. You somehow leveled up to be the best at where you are. But in terms of your company, Arrival, I read that it was one of the fastest or the fastest branding agency. Am I correct in Australia?
Yeah. Yeah. We
How
looked at around. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I was literally going to ask you that question, but you were answering anyway. It's just how did you measure that? How did you become so big? And how do you define where you are at the moment?
Yeah, so like we're psychopathic in a sense where we look at all of our competitors in the market, and I think a lot of times people say, "Well, we don't have competition," and I think it's
Mm,
kind of a selfish thing to say because if your company were to cease to exist, where would the customer go? That's your
mm,
competition essentially. So if I cease to exist, I think our clients would have gone to other agencies in Sydney or in Australia or even abroad. But we looked at the Australian market and we looked at all of different branding agencies that were actually branding agencies because there's a lot of marketing agencies or advertising agencies that also do branding or web agencies that also do branding, but we purely build brands. So we looked at
mm,
and isolated the companies that purely build brands in Australia,
mm,
essentially. And that's their core ethos. And yeah, we tracked them on LinkedIn. We looked at how many employees they had, and then we just tracked our trajectory, like how fast we were growing compared to all of our competitors. And it was obvious that we were up and coming. And I think because our unique marketing is that it's content driven. So majority of our leads come to our agency because of my personal brand and because of our content. It's changing now. We're starting to deploy more cold marketing through advertisements and stuff. But I would say, yeah, for the past 4 years, the majority of the lead gens come from just producing online social media content.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, again, you answered my question. It was, what's your secret to grow so fast and so quick? And I know you've got quite a strong online presence. And I was saying this to Cam earlier, just off. It was something I loved about you. It was your energy. You could feel it on your social media as well. Like you're really polite. I was like, out of everybody I've spoken to, and I speak to quite a lot of people, you were the most courteous, you're the most helpful, you're most genuine that I found so far. Obviously not throwing shade at anybody else, but it's just the a vibe you get of somebody. Um, is that something that you? I'm not saying it's tactical, but is that something that you naturally just do anyway? Is that something that you've learned to do?
Yeah, I think naturally I strike people in a weird chord, like growing up, I would do things like genuine things, and this is not to stroke my ego or anything. Like when I was 19, I created a youth group for like a church community I was in, and I would go out in the streets and I would find kids on drugs, and I would take them into my home and help rehabilitate them and help them get jobs and help them kind of like find purpose and meaning in life. So like that was for not any money other than just pure passion of like genuinely just loving people and wanting, the youth to do well. So I think, if I follow that thread through to today, I think when I meet a client, I genuinely try to connect with them on their goals, their purpose, their mission. I think a lot of designers and a lot of people in our agency or our industry, like, I would say that, not to say that they don't care about their clients, but I think there's a pedigree where like you can get really obsessed with helping your client. And it's my energy, I think, is just a genuine curiosity, like just insatiable curiosity to help others. And I think our X factor and what's allowed us to grow so fast is a couple of things. One, which is I realized the power of having a personal brand that points at an agency, rather than just having an agency where the CEO is a bit unknown. I think that gives a lot of business owners a sense of security. Like, this is the guy I'm going to be working with. If this is how he operates and behaves and speaks, I want to partner with someone like that to help me with my business versus here's a website for an agency. I hope they look after me. So I think we penetrate the market in a different way. I think a lot of our competitors rely on ads, SEO, Google AdWords, marketing campaigns, email campaigns, and all that stuff's great. Like, we do that too. But I think like I said, we've made millions upon millions of dollars just because my Instagram got someone to DM me, and then I introduced that person to my team, and then they come on board, and we've had clients work with us for the last 4 years straight. So I think, it's genuine care, genuine curiosity, and really trying to facilitate a space for a business owner to feel heard. I think, I work with a lot of graphic designers and freelancers, and something they often lack is sales acumen, business acumen. That they're beautiful, wonderful designers that have incredible ideas, but I think if you can't really connect and energetically resonate with a business owner and how a business owner thinks, it can be tricky. So a business owner is constantly like trying to move the needle, constantly trying to feed mouths, constantly chasing the cash flow and the next paycheck, and they're trying to beat the competitors, and they're fearful that the market's changing. So if you can really understand like what their problems are, and you can connect the dots back to your design or your messaging or your strategy, can actually help them with those problems. You have to educate them through the process. You have to build trust. They have to feel that you're on the same side of the fence as them. I think that's 98% of the game. And then 2% of it's design, honestly. So I think if you invert what it means to grow an agency, it's to almost be like a business psychologist.
Yeah.
In many ways.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do want to ask you this question as well, and it might be looking at how you started your business, but in terms of, let's say you're quite established at the moment, and I know you have major directions to go in and goals to achieve, but for somebody that's starting now, for somebody that's sitting here listening in the audience thinking, I wish I was a designer, I wish I had my own agency, I wish I had my own business, what would your number one advice be for them? Where to go, what to do, how to do it?
My advice would to be study and learn how to sell, because I worked in the sales industry, and even salespeople, shockingly, will get to a point and they go, "I know everything." And like even now, I'm certainly like always questioning my process. Like, could my sales process be better? Could my proposal kits be better? Could my onboarding process be better? Could my communication skills and touch points throughout the project be better? I think salespeople understand that you're in a relationship with this individual, and they're expecting you to kind of be not their beck and call, but like really with them in the process. Excuse me. I would say that, if anyone's looking to get started, you have to know how to speak business to a business person, because if you're trying to sell a medium-sized business and you're a startup freelancer, the business owner is going to tend to want to work with people like them, even though you're a designer and that's the problem you solve. A medium-sized business owner wants to work predominantly with other medium-sized business owners. A big business person wants to work with someone who can at least speak and understand the weight of big business. So, the reason we're able to do quotes with Citibank and big brands like that is because I can stand in front of a board and talk their language to them. There's no sense of intimidation. There's no sense of, imposter syndrome. It's just like, business, I know business. You know what you want. I can help you deliver it. Like it's that ability to like be on even keel with the person in front of you. If you're getting on calls and you're trembling at the person in front of you because they're a big business person or they're a medium-sized business person and you're just a lowly freelancer, you have to work on that. You have to get to the point where you're able to speak to them the way they like to speak and that they like to be spoken to. And if they get an inclination that you don't understand what it's like to run a business, you don't understand how it is to sell their product or offer their services, if they get any whiff that you're not fully in comprehension of what they do, they're not going to buy from you. So I think, so many freelancers out there that are world-class designers that could build incredible logo systems and create wonderful content or videography or what have you. You have to learn how to be a business person for sure. Like you got to learn that. And I would say grab the books, go to the seminars. You'd be shocked how much money you'll make, not by improving your design skills and increasing your portfolio, but by getting out there and knowing how to sell. Sell yourself, sell your service, sell the problem that they're trying to tackle. I think that the sales component is the difference between my competitors and why I've crushed them. I'm obsessed with the sales process, and I think people see selling or sales as a dirty word. To me, sales is literally an exchange of energy, right? So if you have a problem where you're like, I want to grow my social media channel, right? You're like, that's the problem I have. I'm like, cool. My job is to figure out how much money you're willing to part with to trade for that. Like, what's that worth to you? If it's not worth much, if it's worth $200, you're going to be willing to pay $200. If it's worth $2,000, you'll be willing to pay $2,000. So the value of what you want and what you're willing to depart with for it, that's an even exchange, right? So then if I deliver for you and you get what you want and I get the money, I get to do with the money what I want, you get the problem solved, you get to reap the rewards of that. That's a mutual exchange. It's a win for you. It's a win for me. So long as that, like, there's a respect there of what's being exchanged. That's all it is. Sales is just trying to figure out what's this worth to the person in front of me. Is it equal to what I want? If not, I'm ripping myself off. And like, there's no right or wrong price either. Like a lot of designers and agency owners ask me like, hey, how much should I be charging? My question is like, well, what do you want to get paid? And like, it can't be that easy. I'm like, it literally is. Figure out what you want to get paid. And then let's build a strategy to get you in front of the people that value what you offer. And like, there may be some nuances there where the value is not quite equal to what they're asking for. But if you know how to build a product and you know what you're worth, it's just getting in front of people with the confidence and saying, this logo is worth 50 grand. And they're like, okay,
exactly.
It's worth.
You mentioned something there that I was actually thinking the whole way through. As you were speaking through your whole sales process and why it's so important, I was thinking of two things. So the first thing I was thinking of is having that confidence, not in just yourself, but the confidence that the other person needs to believe in you. So you need to have that confidence. But the second is the fact that you need to have value in yourself, regardless if you're a freelancer, business owner, CEO, multimillionaire, influencer. Is having that value in yourself so you can actually stand up and speak to those people in those sales processes. But you mentioned it there again. It's the value. What's that worth to you? Which is what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, like people ask me, like, they're like, Dain, you talk about you sold a logo for $50 and you've sold one for 50,000. Like, what's the difference? I'm like, literally nothing. But the value for the individual in front of me. Like, how do they value that? And then people would debate, well, it's unethical to sell a logo to 50,000 to one person, but 50 to another. And I would say, well, if you were Jay-Z and you were creating a beat for M&M, are you going to charge
Yeah.
$50? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, well, no, M&M's going to make tons of money off it. And it's like, well, okay,
Yeah.
then what's the difference between creating a beat and creating a logo, right? If I create a logo for a $100 million company, I should be paid handsomely for that. If I create a
Yeah,
logo for
100%.
a $10,000 company, I should be paid handsomely for the ratio. So like,
Yeah.
I don't charge everyone $50,000 for a logo, and we've also pitched in the six figures for logos.
Mm.
It's a more complicated process when you're dealing with someone of that caliber, like when you're working on a national retailer with hundreds of stores and tens of thousands of consumers, and that logo really has to be perfect. Then you damn well better do your research and
Yeah.
ideate maybe more concepts, and really do your due diligence and bring your A game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yes, 100% it does. And the question that I want to lead on after that as well, actually, which it's a nice segue into this, is let's say you're dealing with somebody as a brand strategist, and that person is a bit of a polymath, has various different areas that they're into, and none of them relate. How do you tackle that as a brand strategist? Because I know there's a lot of people, and a lot of people will message me saying, "Look, we're struggling with this," and I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I'm not a brand strategist. I have my own personal brands, and that's it. How would you tackle that kind of, I think, challenge where they've got so many different industries that they're involved in? There's so many different. I think I've asked you this as well personally. How would you tackle that one?
Yeah, I think, well, if you look at the heartbeat of branding, right? So just
Mm,
to clear this up, so branding is like, there's a difference between branding, identity, and like a logo, for example. So like a logo essentially is like a symbol that sits on
yeah.
top of a brand. It's a cherry on top of the cake. It's a symbol that people must recognize. It must be memorable. It must like live in their visual cortex and like, own space in their mind so they can recall it, see it in their head, and remember
Mm,
it when it pops up in the side of a billboard or whatever.
yeah.
Um, Branding is the process, essentially, of moving toward a said goal. So if you came to me and you said, "Hey, I'm launching a fashion label. I want to be a suburban luxury brand that makes artisanal jackets, and it's like at the
Mm,
top end of the market, and it's $5,000 per jacket." Great, that's your goal. You can't start
mm,
there per se, right? So that if that's your objective and your target and your goal for your brand, branding is the process by which we would outline what's the roadmap to get there, right? So
mhm.
like, who are we? Why do we exist? Why should the consumer
Yep.
care? Who is the consumer? How do we get in front of them? How do we speak to them when we are in front of them? How do we want the consumer to feel? How do we behave? What's our personality type? Are we brutal and ruthless? Are we sleek and cool? Are we modern and suburban? Like what's the
Yeah.
ethos, the DNA, the energy, the personality? Where are we positioned in the market? Who are our competition? Like how do we strike against them and all the rest of it? And there's parts of marketing in here as well, but that's branding. Branding is the process of which you're trying to move yourself through the marketplace to a goal. Brand lives in the mind of the consumer. So
Mm,
if I put my $5,000 jacket in a new retail store that pops up out of nowhere, someone's going to walk into the store and have like no affinity or relationship with that jacket being worth $5,000. They're like, what's this brand? What's this jacket? Sure, it looks great. I'm not paying $5,000 for it. Like I don't connect with this. Whereas a
yeah.
Louis Vuitton or a Nike or any of the LVMH brands or whatever, like they've got the heritage, they've got the bourgeois, they've
Yeah.
got this narrative that you're in when you're in the store, right? And they're meant
Yeah.
to be intimidating and all the rest of it. Um, I would say that the brand lives in the consumer's mind, and you have to build that
Mm,
over time. You have to act branding to
mm,
get the consumer to think of you in a certain way. So I had an
yeah.
interesting guest on our podcast yesterday, and he worked with Tom Brown, and he also worked or he tried to get a job with Ralph Lauren and was interviewed by Ralph Lauren. So think
Mm,
about Ralph Lauren, one of the biggest fashion label icons of our century. And in the interview, he was asked by Ralph Lauren, like, what do you think branding is? And Josh Sparks is his name. He went on a ramble for like 33 minutes, he said. And then he said back to Ralph Lauren, like, what is branding to you? And Ralph Lauren said, deposits and withdrawals. That's it. And he was like, what do you mean? So like he meant that like every time he did a runway or every time he did like a big catalog shoot or a billboard or a television commercial or through a $12 million party with celebrities, he's like, they're all just deposits to build the narrative of what the brand means, the promise is, what the relationship and the connective tissue is between Ralph Lauren and the public. And that's like, hey, if you buy us and wear us, you're going to be luxurious and you're going to be seen as someone of wealth and status and stature. That's the relationship. You buy my shirt, you get this emotional connection in your community. That's the trade of energy. So I think that's that whole process of Ralph Lauren doing that is branding. But brand is the customer who walks in the store and goes, oh, Ralph Lauren means X to me. I become a certain type of individual if I buy and wear this, or if I buy this Gucci handbag, or if I wear this Supreme hoodie, I become a certain type of individual. That's the brand activated in the consumer's mind. So that's brands. That's the activation in the consumer's mind. Branding is how do you get there? But identity is the visual assets. So the logo is a part of the identity, the color palette, the fonts, the visual stylization, the textures, the fabrics, the patterns. Coca-Cola has the swoosh and the bubbles and the sun rays and the youthful people, and that's all visual identity. So if you understand what that is, it becomes a lot clearer then to realize that branding, to come back to your point, to answer your question, branding's not about being clever. It's about being clear, being very distinct on like, this is our promise, this is why we exist, and this is why you should care. If that isn't clear and you can't say that in 10 or 15 seconds, you really don't have a brand, right? Because what are you activating in the consumer's minds other than confusion? If you're activating confusion, dude, they're going to give you 4 seconds and move on, right? So to be able to say that we have a brand means that consumers really understand what you're about and they care about something that you do. I think if anyone's trying to be a lot of things, what actually ends up happening is they just become nothing to the consumer. There's no brand activation. You have to be clear, precise. You have to mean something. Sure, you can sell products. Sure, you can sell services, but it doesn't mean that the brand's fully activated in someone's mind. As soon as they see a competitor, they might go buy. When someone's like a fan, like an Apple fan, dude, they're not going to go buy a Samsung overnight. That's gonna be, you're going to have to crowbar someone's brain to get them to buy a Samsung if they've been using an 100%. Apple for 8 years. So that's brand activation in someone's head. So I think if you're trying to do brand activation and really become known for something, you have to be willing to be hated by a portion of the market. A lot of people hate Apple. Great. It means that the other portion of people go, well, I love Apple and I don't understand why you don't like it. And it creates this tribalism. So brand is about knowing your tribe and activating that tribalism in them to want to fuck with your products, man. So I think, what we do in workshops to help people figure that out is we have to go, well, the 3 big questions, like, why do you exist? To make money, sell products because we're better. Great. That's not alluring. How is that going to activate anything exciting in my head? Right? When Apple says, think different, challenge the status quo, be a rebel with a cause. It's like, boom, activated. I'm that kind of person. I want to buy that product. Like it's you have to connect with your tribe.
That made me, as you were saying that just made me think, like, I think 10,000 different things just then, as soon as you said those, I think, taglines, which is a very good point, actually. I never actually have thought of it as that. And I wanted to quickly ask as well, a lot of what you're doing at the moment, and a lot of what you do in branding is coming out in the UK, I know, as a book, is already out in other places, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so the book, it's not out anywhere yet. So we just finished the last round of editing. So when you do editorial with a publisher, there's like lots of rounds of like revisions and edits and stuff. So right now we're just in the midst of like putting the QR codes in the book and all those things. But yeah, May 7th, it's going to be actually available to read. But you can pre-order it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Booktopia, Dimmicks. People can just pre-order and it'll show up and arrive probably on the 8th or 9th of May. Yeah.
Amazing. Tell me a little bit about it, as much as you can, without giving away the book.
Yeah, I'm happy to give it away, man. Like I think my passion is just to give away as much as possible. And when the publisher reached out to me and said, "Do you want to publish a book?" I was like hesitant. I'm like, "Oh, I don't know if I got time to write one, but like that'd be really cool." But the ambition was to literally just give away like everything I did for free or as cheap as possible, right? Because clients pay me a ton, and like I said before, my heart's always to give back to the community, to the youth, to people in business that are trying to figure this whole industry out of whatever they're doing. The the book's about personal branding. So it's a story about how I was able to go from like nothing in a full-time job to freelancing a little bit to
Yeah.
running an agency in 90 days. And I did it through just a system of deployment. I just executed the system of content creation. But the book helps people to figure out like what's their niche, what is personal branding, and like how do they psychologically deploy it. How do they romanticize their audience and have their audience turn into a tribe that loves them? Like, how do you get this
Hmm.
tribalism, brand activation because of your face on a camera or because of the graphics you make or whatever you do online as a personality? How do
Yeah.
you woo the audience to go, I don't want to just like follow this person. I want to engage. I want to comment.
Mm.
I want to DM them. I want to buy their
Yeah.
books and do stuff with them. So I've put a lot of psychology and tactics into the book, but each chapter has a lesson of theory and then an exercise at the end that someone can go do. And by the end of the book, essentially someone just needs to go out there and do what I outlaid in the book for 90 days, and they can build a brand. The reason I'm so confident about this is when I've sat down with people and everything I teach in this book, I've done with them one-on-one. Um, you know, these people now run million-dollar businesses. And I know that sounds,
Wow.
you know, uh, exuberant or crazy, but here's the thing. I've taught this material to maybe, I would say collectively, for 4 or 5 thousand people in Australia, and a handful have done it. So I'm not saying
Mm.
it's easy, but like those who choose to do what I've talked about in this book for 90 days, every single one
Yeah.
of them have had crazy success on social media. Um, because I ran a social media agency. I grew my own personal brands. Like I
Mm.
know what I have to do every day, every month to continue to scale it. So that's all in the book. Also, we talk about how to create a product, how to monetize your product, how to sell your products, how do you pitch your products, um, and how do you make social media content and how the
Amazing.
algorithm works and how to conduct yourself in business. So yeah, it's just everything I've learned over the years, just crammed it into 12 chapters and tried to make it fun to read. It's got
Yeah.
illustrations and diagrams and things as well. Yeah.
Perfect. Tell everybody the name of the book again. So just it's in the audio
Yeah.
as well.
It's the 90-day brand plan. There's no audio yet. The publishers are really stressing us to do the physical and get that out there in the world. And then we will certainly look at doing audio and the other variants of that as well.
Good. Good. I was going to say, it sounds like a lot of your personalities in there as well. Which will be quite nice to read.
Yeah, some stories, some jokes, some self-deprecation. It's great.
Yeah, perfect. So what we'll do, I don't want to take too much time. And again, I know you're super busy. What we'll do, we'll transition into the final segment of this podcast, which every guest goes through. Some of them feel intimidated by it. Some people love it. Whatever you prefer.
The stage is set, the spotlight is on. This is Doses of Authenticity, where the real stories unfold, every answer reveals a new layer, and the true self shines. Let the questioning begin.
What is your number one life philosophy?
Great question. I would say my number one life philosophy has recently changed. Um, for me, it's to be very heart led. I think that oftentimes, we can be led by others, or we can be led by hyper analysis
Mhm.
or anything like that. I think when you have children and you have a spouse that loves you and you have a team that are looking to you for leadership, I think if you lead with your heart, you're leading with love, you're leading from a healthy place. I think oftentimes, not always, but when you lead with your head, it can come from fear, it can come from scarcity or necessity. I think being heart-led means to me to do things that you're passionate about, that give you life, that bring you joy, and to do things from a place of joy and love has worked out better for me than when I make decisions based out of fear.
How do you want to be remembered?
And he's a good dude.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think like I would like to be remembered as someone who gave it all away for free, and really expected nothing in return. I'd like to be thought of someone who was cheeky and playful and whimsical, and crafty, and a little kind of like a little bit of hustle or grit. I think that's just my nature. That's my character. I've been described as a bull in a china shop, and I'm like, well, that's just who I am, So, yeah, if that answers your question.
One change you would make to society.
Yeah, man, good one, dude. I think one change I would make to society is I think communities need more, um, they need more togetherness. I think my experience is that the communities we live in are very compartmentalized. Like people don't really know their neighbors. They don't really know who's in their neighborhood. Not always, but like from my experience,
Mhm.
um, I don't know. I feel like the world would be a much more interesting, colorful, playful place if everyone were to like properly connect with their community more, not just their circle. I think there's so much value and beauty in being connected to those that do life with you and around you. And I
Mhm.
think we're too isolated most of the time.
The best advice you have been given.
Yeah, I would say the best advice I've ever been given was from Vin Yang or Vin Jiang.
Mm.
Um, he and I were having a conversation, and he talked about some of the pain he had in his life, and some of the regrets he had as a father. And he really helped me realize the weight of creating those special moments with your family, like with your children and your spouse. I think we can get too caught up in the day to day and the goals and the tasks, and too little time being present and just enjoying a moment with someone you love. Um, but not just enjoying it when they appear, it's like actively creating them. So when I chat to Vin, he actively creates frequent special moments that they photograph, uh, so that when he's not feeling so great, he'll look at those photos and they'll bring him magnitudes of joy. Um, so like
That
if
is
he had a special moment
amazing.
with his son and he filmed it, or he took a photo of it, I think, yeah, he's like, whenever you just things are a little rough, you just bring up those photos and you just jump into a pool of emotions and it resets you. Since I've started doing that with my kids, like every week, I try to take my daughter on a date. Every week, I try to take my son on a little adventure, and I try to do something special for my spouse, and we try to capture those moments. And business can be tough, man. When you're doing like an 18-hour day, you're like, Jesus Christ, you look at a photo and you're like, all right, that's why I'm doing it. So
Yeah.
I think it's just, yeah, trying to be present and try to create more specialness in life. I think it's very
That
important.
that is an amazing, amazing answer. I love that one. What makes you authentic and unique?
Yeah, I think people have described me as being in a bit of an enigma. Like oftentimes when I meet people in person, they either love me or hate me right off the bat. Um, and the people that hate me off the bat, they think I have an agenda. They're like, this guy's
Mm.
too friendly, he's too loving, he's too kind, he's too generous. Like, what does he want from me? So they guards up. So for people that are, I'll answer this question in a roundabout way. For people that are like a little bit more, you got to earn their trust. They don't just give it naturally. I can rub them the wrong way. But in being that, I think that I can get their guard down pretty quickly. So like I would say my X factor is really rapidly building a friendship with someone, like really being able to connect with them and understand what the world means to them and respect them enough that I don't have to be like them, but I'm comfortable to go into their world and hang out in their world
Yeah.
with them and then go back to my world. So I think that ability to transition between worlds has really
Yeah.
allowed me to build some crazy relationships with clients, with billionaires, with people in philanthropy, with people that do cool stuff. People kind of let me into their orbit probably too quickly. I've got an ability to kind of earn trust with people very quickly. Yeah.
Amazing. Again, thank you so much, Dain. This is coming to the end of the podcast, and I'm so upset about it because I love this conversation. It's been amazing to have you on. Before we shoot off, can you tell everybody where to find you, where to find the book again, and anything else, any closing comments you may have?
Yeah, I think everything you'll be able to find out my Instagram. Just look up Dain Walker, DAIN, or just go to my website, dainwalker.com. Everything's on those two platforms, but people can reach out to me. People are shocked that they DM me and I DM back or voice message back. So, yeah, I'm happy to chat to anyone who has any questions from today or wants me to unpack anything further. But I appreciate you having me on, man. Thank you for chasing me for 8 months. This was fun.